Chapter 7. Hope you like my asthma. Hunzrin turned out to be a tall, dark-skinned drow with a long scar splitting his face in half. His black robe was in perfect condition. Underneath it, he wore a chainmail adorned with silver ornaments. He looked at Sour, throwing his eyebrows and putting his hand on the hilt of his sword.
Who are you?
There's some guys from the rock, one of the cultists said. Hunzrin raised his hand, immediately silencing the crowd. He winced slightly and looked at Fatbeard, who missed the cue and kept talking. Wait, the rock is in it too? The barbarian whispered. I liked him in Fast and Furious.
I prefer more ambitious movies,
Harrison said. Yeah, you and your uncle directed Daring Do and Mark Thief and Maripor, Fatbeard replied, rolling his eyes.
Enough of this nonsense, Harrison exclaimed. What news do you bring from the rock?
You may cease searching for the adventurers who massacred Chandra's group, Sarah replied. Chill's got him.
Oh, really?
Hunzrin raised his eyebrows and smirked.
That's very interesting, because we found a half-fried chul at the ridge near the village. Something seemed very suspicious, so we went to the village. Guess what we found?
Charred ruins and a lot of corpses? Sarah shrugged. We know way more than you do.
Some of the corpses seem very old, Hunzrin replied. They couldn't come to the village on their own, so either someone brought them there, or there was some kind of undead infestation. This would mean the presence of a skilled necromancer.
One of the drow from Hunzrin's guard walked in, limping slightly. There was a necromancer in their group, she said. Some little piece of shit, like a gnome or a halfling. Sarah looked at the female drow. Who the fuck are you? Chandra Thortal, the drow replied. They had another gnome or other shit who threw a bomb at me. She took her hood off, revealing a nasty burn mark on her face. Also some archer, a big guy with a sword, and something like a demon or a succubus. When we came back to retrieve the bodies, one of our soldiers was still, excited, even though his guts were all over the place. A succubus, you say? Sarah smirked. Maybe if you didn't spend your time thinking of succubi, you wouldn't be so glaringly incompetent. And who are you to say that? Chandra exclaimed. I didn't spend the last week digging through corpses to listen to some random fucking smartass from the rock telling me I'm incompetent.
Enough, Chandra, Hunzrin exclaimed. Adventurous, undead. Someone's on our ass.
Genius, Sarah rolled her eyes. And yet when we came to this camp, it was guarded by two pissheads. If it continues, we'll have to bring you back to the rock to explain why this place looks like a cheap brothel. Exactly. Greymouser stood up. In fact, we better go there. Those undead are truly an alarming sight.
They ripped that old lazy and crazy innkeeper to pieces, Hunzrin said, but we found no trace of his daughter.
Charlie looked around and tried to hide behind a pony known as Lyra Heartstrings. Luckily, no one seemed to pay attention to that. Sarah was quite good at stealing the spotlight. Some of the cultists decided to gather their belongings and pack their tents, but Hunzrin stopped them with a short gesture.
We are not going anywhere, he said. My orders say we must maintain the outposts.
And now we change the orders, Greymouser replied, trying to look down at the drow with predictable results.
Hunzrin winced. And who are you? I demand written orders for the rock, not some random halfling.
Fatbeard, so many orders, Greymouser muttered. The barbarian walked to the drow and punched him, or rather attempted to do so. Hunzrin dodged with grace and spun, producing a long knife from his robe. He was about to stab Fatbeard when something heavy hit him in the knee, knocking him off balance. He didn't fall, though, but when he recovered, he saw some sort of humanoid aiming a big, complicated crossbow at his face.
What the hell? He asked, looking at the new attacker. You have goblins at the rock, too?
Gamork Gathering, at the service, the artificer smirked. Gamork is a half-orc, and this is Gamork's full-on crossbow. One turn of the crank, you'll become a proud pincushion.
You're the ugliest half-orc I've ever seen, and that bar is pretty low,
Hunzrin muttered. Gamork gained the crossbow. So Gamork show you his fences. Greymouser looked around. I don't want to interrupt, but about 100 drow are aiming their bows at us.
Totally! This baby holds 30 bolts. Mark pointed the crossbow.
I said 100. Halfling muttered. Sure, we can hope to go full circle or firing squads to each other, but I'd rather not be in the middle of all this.
Totally. Good luck at this, Mark replied. The old suit of Rita.
Tundra smirked at the half-orc and aimed her bow at Hudson. And that's where you're wrong, my little green friend. I'll gladly take hundreds. Her voice drowned in a fit of macabre coughing, like a morgue spun to crack at a crossbow, or at least he had torn the bolts at her. The other aimed their bows, but hundreds stopped them.
Good riddance,
he said, looking at Chandra's body.
Still, my people are aiming at you, and someone is here becoming a pincushion. Then I'm afraid it's you. He smirked. Still, this whole story seems absurd.
He sighed.
Guess it'll be best to take you to the rock for some questioning.
Look at the bright side, Fafnir said. We wanted to go there anyway. Still, not like this, Sarah sighed. They were all tied, laying on a hay wagon pulled by a pony known as Lyra Heartstrings, and guarded by no one else but Finian Tealeaf and Peregrine Toastcouple, which took additional effort to get Greg Mouser and check the ropes binding him every few minutes. Charlene rolled her eyes. Her hands were tied, but she waved her fingers at Fafnir. Is the elf bitch ever happy? Maybe he doesn't realize that soon we'll meet the rock, the barbarian replied. I'd like to ask him a few questions. I can hear this, Sour muttered. How do you know we're talking about you? Fafnir shouted. It's not like you understand Charlene. I'm guessing from your tone, Sarah replied. Also, I'd like to remind you that Sunny and Sugarcoat are dudes, and it's not like Sugarcoat can talk right now. Master, known as Sugarcoat, tossed her as restrained to try to kick one of their guards.
I wonder what they'll do to us at the rock,
Gamark muttered, looking at the massive wall of stone getting closer and closer to them.
This place doesn't look very friendly.
It smells of sulfur and dead bodies, Sarah said, sniffing the air, which is quite a feat for moronic cultists who use a squid as their sigil. Maybe it's a dead whale, Fafnir shrugged. Those things can smell even worse after they explode, you know. The bones around us look more like elephants. Sarah looked around. Where did they even get elephants here? They don't just live here. Well, not anymore, Fafnir muttered, looking at the rock in front of them. This looks like a challenge. Only a barbarian could take a look at this and call it a challenge. Sarah shook her head, staring at the large store in the stone wall. It was made of gold, with squid-like engravings in it. It was also covered in what looked like a collection of old bloodstains, flies circling around him. I say we are thoroughly fucked. Charlie gestured when Hunter walked to the door and knocked, and not in a fun way. Don't worry, we'll come up with something, Fafnir replied. You will? You mean you don't have a plan already? Charlene rolled her eyes. That's how we usually roll! Fafnir looked at Finny and Tealeaf, and Pear and Tosscobble. If we don't know our escape plan, how would they know it? This is ridiculous, Charlene sighed. Nah, that's us. Fafnir paused as the cart drove past the gate, deeper into the dungeon, illuminated only by a handful of torches. The smell of old blood and rotting flesh was almost unbearable. The barbarian could see something moving in the darkness as they rode across the underground hall. Trust me, it doesn't look better with night vision, Sour muttered. Huh? Greymouser asked. Shut up, Perry and Tosscobble said. So you're gonna be the Chancellor. I didn't really see you if I sent you. Chancellor? Fafnir asked. Does he look like the Rock? God's fucking damn it. Charlie shook her head. If my hands weren't dry, I'd go with a facepalm. At least I can apply it. The cart stopped. Several drow walked to it, prompting the adventurers to get to it. Greymouser got yanked out of the cart and put on his feet, but Gamork stopped the cultists with a hand gesture.
Gamork will go by himself, he said.
If someone touches me, they get stabbed. Sarah jumped off the cart gracefully. Your hands are tied, Fafnir muttered, dropping on the stone floor. As if that ever stopped me before, Sarah smirked. This way until... Hudson! The word cut the darkness like a knife made of ice. A tall, slender cultist walked to the drow. His robe looked cleaner and more expensive than those of the other cultists, his hood covering his face. Why did you come here? He doesn't look like the Rock, Fafnir the barbarians whispered, but like Chancellor Palpatine. Charlene sighed, moving her hands to somehow convey her thoughts with gestures. Well, what did you expect from a guy called the Chancellor? Chill's bassist? Well, you could make some kick-ass gig in the hall, Vivian replied. Shut up and take my hand. Furling furrowed her eyebrows.
These people walked into our camp, claiming they're your messengers.
Hunter looked into the Chancellor.
They beat up the guards in this little green, He looked at Gamark and shrugged. This goblin killed Chandra with this thing.
He took Gamark's crossbow to the Chancellor. Good riddance. The Chancellor took the crossbow and looked at the crank. The most unusual mechanism. I don't think any of my artificers could produce such a thing. Also, I don't recall sending any messages. Fafnir hissed. A sudden wave of hot air engulfed his hands for a moment. But when it disappeared, he felt the rope binding them turn to ash and some charred remains. He looked around and saw Charlene, who smirked at him. Her hands were also free. Wait, so you are a mystic after all? He asked. One more word and I'll burn your tongue off. Charlene gestured. The tiefling on the left has your sword. Till then, you could use the halfling as a weapon. It is very interesting that those guys showed up just when we got report of these adventurers who defeated Chandra's group. The Chancellor furrowed his eyebrows. Bring them to the torture chamber. I want to know everything about them before we let the beast feed on them.
As you wish.
Husband bowed and walked to Fafnir.
You go first, big guy.
Well, there's one thing. Fafnir smiled sheepishly.
What's that?
Husband asked. Talk to the fist! Fafnir exclaimed, punching the drow, who dropped to the ground. The barbarian spun, grabbing Finny and Tealeaf and hitting him with the nearest guard. One of the cultists screamed, his robe engulfed in flames. Charlene wrested free Grey Mouser and Gamork, while Sarah managed to cut her binds with a small knife as he had hidden up her sleeve. The knife was currently in the guts of the nearest cultist, who was lying on the ground coughing violently. Run! Fafnir tossed Finny and Tealeaf into the tiefling cultist and grabbed his sword. He didn't tell twice. His friends followed him, Charlene burning her way across the crowd. Oh, not so fast! Pattering tossed Gobble rushed to Grey Mouser, grabbing his robe. The cleric turned back at the moment she got stabbed in the chest. Perry smoked when Grey Mouser dropped to the ground. Thus for Sheena Tealeaf, he muttered. This was, however, his final blow in the battle. Sarah managed to regain her bow and shoot her arrow right at Halfling's eyes, causing him to fall next to his victim. You missed, Fafnir said. Nah, someone who killed Sugarcoat deserves to survive, Sarah shrugged. Maybe he'll buy an inn now. I better check he's still alive. Fafnir rushed through the crowd of cultists, beheading two of them, and grabbed Grey Mouser's body. You okay there? The halfling coughed, spraying blood around. I have a knife in my lung, he whispered. I can take it out, Fafnir replied, punching a cultist who got in his way. Did you ever listen to Nurse Heartless during the first aid classes? Grey Mouser rolled his eyes. Only was he talked about getting shot, the barbarian replied. You know, in case Twilight and Moondancer ever went full pumped-up kicks. He looked at Grey Mouser. Are you okay? I'm one death saving throw away from dying, and I just heard a tiny voice that sounds exactly like our DM, telling me that you really shouldn't have mentioned pumped-up kicks. Don't worry, Lemon. Lemon will fix you, Fafnir smacked his forehead. Wait, she died already, and her new character can only make the world burn. Maybe I can stabilize you? I don't trust your wisdom checks that much. Suddenly, a half-orc cultist charged at Fafnir, only to fall on the floor, arrows sticking from his back. Sarah waved to the barbarian, pointing at the dark corridor leading deeper into the mine. Fafnir ran towards her. Gamork joined him, somehow managing to overtake him despite much shorter legs. They reached the corridor, followed by cultists and a wall of fire created by Charlene. Where we go now? Fafnir asked. Also, is there a healer in the house? Grey Mouser's alive? Sarah asked. I can stabilize him. And we need to get out of there if we want to heal him.
Why not? Gamork found a getaway vehicle.
Gamork pointed at the floor. There were tracks on it, complete with several minecarts on a sidetrack. A great underground roller coaster, Fafnir said. Where's Charlene? Suddenly, they saw the innkeeper's daughter running towards them. She was pale, her eyes sunken as she didn't sleep for days. Behind her, the hull was burning, but some cultists already gathered around Herzern and the Chancellor to form a search party. I need healing. Charlene staggered, pressing herself against the minecart. Burning things with your mind is a sure way to get exhausted quickly. What's he talking about? Sarah asked.
It's hard to burn stuff, Fafir replied. Also, we need more healing.
Later, Sarah said, hopping in a minecart. How do you steer this thing?
You really don't, Gamark replied. It has brakes, and you can kind of taste the directions at junctions, but otherwise it's a fun ride. You never know what you get.
Works for me. Fafir jumped to the cart, dropping Grey Mouse on his floor. Does he need seatbelts?
Where they're going, they don't need seatbelts.
Gamark released the brakes, and the cart started to slowly roll forward. The corridor was going down, deeper underground, so it quickly accelerated. However, they could still hear the voices of the cultists and the sound of more carts rolling. Okay, hold this. Sarah gave Gamark her bow, looked at Grey Mouser. How do I even stabilize a stabbed halfling? So he sighed, turned to Fafir. How the ER thing doesn't help, you know.
It'd help even less if I went for healing, Fafir rolled for his eyes. Also, you better hurry. Gamark can't sue a bow that's bigger than him.
No, but I do know what could possibly help inspire you. I can't do this all on my own. No, I'm no Superman. What? When I play clerics, humming the scrubs opening helps inspire me. Several bolts flew past him, followed by a spell that hit the wall, causing a few beats of shrapnel to hit the cart.
They still have Gamark's crossbow, Gamark muttered. At least they don't know how to reload.
I think we have some. I see he'll post it somewhere, Sarah muttered. They didn't take it.
Maybe because you stabbed the first two guys who searched you?
Fafir turned to Charlie and grabbed the sleeve. What? Charlie waved her hand. I have a potion of supreme healing. Twice for her eyebrows and looked at Lemon. You don't have a potion of supreme healing. It's right there, on my equipment list. Lemon replied, pointing at the large stack of papers in front of Twilight. Only now she knows Twilight may not actually read it. Some parts were marked with highlighters and multiple colors and sticky notes. It's not, Twilight said. You may have thought that putting your equipment list in the middle of an erotic story featuring Charlene's parents was a clever move, but I actually got to that part. Well, I actually didn't expect this story to turn erotic, which made it pretty awkward since I was reading it in the toilet. Also, while you do have some interesting items in your bags, the Potion of Supreme Healing is not one of them. She grabs Lemon's notes. Other parts I read consisted of unrelated vampire story, featuring a fetish I didn't know I had, another story of Charlotte's father that features things I never knew existed, several pieces of random gibberish which, after reading it backwards, turned out to be a salad recipe in French, a detailed plan on how to murder Sugarcoat, Charlotte's statistics and character traits, a nude portrait of, as far as I can tell, Juniper, sketch with pencil, and fizzle with concrete crayons. Why are you looking at me like that?
You included 7 pieces of information we didn't let them know about, Juniper replied. May I see that portrait?
Here you go.
Twilight found the right page and passed it to Juniper. Not bad. Juniper turned to Lemon. Can I keep it?
Indigo looked at the paper and at Juniper.
Well, they aren't that big.
Like you know anything about the art.
Juniper rolled her eyes.
I'm aerodynamic, Indigo replied.
Speaking of let's get back to the mine carts. I'm waiting for the flooded corridors and the giant boulder part.
Isn't that something for Daring Do in the Temple of Doom? Sunny replied.
It is, but since we're already in the mine carts, I expect no less, Indigo smirked.
Twilight sighed. Okay, let's go with that. Too bad no one has a Pulse of Supreme Healing, Sarah said, leaning over Grey Mouser. But we gotta work with what we got. She raced into her pouch and found an old vial. Let's hope it's not past its expiration date.
Well, going to expire anyway!
Gamark tossed Sarah's bow to Charlene and pulled the brake lever.
Everyone to the left!
They rushed to the left, bouncing the cart. The wheels screeched as it entered a sharp turn. Behind him, some of the cultists fell out the cart and dropped into a bottomless pit. His companions, however, were still after them. Okay, I hope this works. Don't want to waste it on a halfling. Sarah poured the contents of the vial into Grey Mouser's mouth. The necromancer opened his eyes, staring at the ceiling. By the power of Thursadune, he muttered. Sarah rolled her eyes. Yeah, you're welcome. I gained immense wisdom, Mouser muttered.
If you turn to a zombie, I'll kick you out of this cart.
Fafir looked around and saw another cart, filled with cultists approaching them on a parallel track.
Maybe I'll throw you to them.
No need. Sarah grabbed her bow from Charlene and shot at the cart. Then he sewed the cultist's arm. It could be useful for once, she muttered. Can you do the fire thing again? Charlene flipped her off and made a few unfriendly gestures.
She's too tired after the last one, Fafir said. Also, she told me to ask if your parents were, by any chance, siblings.
Sarah saw another cultist. Tell her to eat shit and fall off her horse. Seems when you left the pony named Heartstrings back in the hall. God, what's it on? Gamark exclaimed. Two cultists jumped into the cart. One of them was a gnome. One ended up balancing on the rim of the cart. Gamark helped him by pulling the brake, causing him to fall off the track. They heard a sickening crunch. The cart shook, but after a while it sped up, heavy as before. Half gnome and a gnome in two halves. Charlene dodged the other cultists, pushing towards Fafird. This one, however, was a half-orc. It wasn't easy to get rid of him. He tackled the barbarian, causing the whole cart to shake and almost pushing Sarah out of the vehicle. The half-orc roared when Grey Mouser grabbed his ankle, causing his skin to rot. He raised his leg, trying to shake the halfling orc, but then Gamork tripped him. The cultist fell forward, snapping the brake lever. Letting out a powerful scream, the half-orc got up, but Fafir was faster. Grabbed the bucket lever and stabbed it in the back. The scream turned into a cough as the half-orc spun around wildly, hitting Sarah and knocking her down. Fafir grabbed him, and after a few painfully long seconds manages to lift him, throwing him at the cultist's cart. Is everybody okay? Fafir asked, as he as the cart derailed, crashing into a pillar. I got stumped by a half-orc, Grey Mouser coughed. I'm most definitely not! Gamork, are you crazy? Nah, Gamork spent his whole childhood trapping orcs. Gamork shrugged. As you can guess, Gamork wasn't exactly popular. Yeah, I wonder why, Sauron muttered, getting up and shaking her head. Did we lose him? Yes, Gamork replied. Also, we lost. Unless someone's how to replace the bag. Aren't you an artificer? Sauron asked. Yes, but he's really a brake lever. Gamork pointed at Fafird. I impaled the half-orc with it, Fafir exclaimed. I didn't think you needed after that. That's a claim that got to be a perfectly usable brake lever. Gamork shrugged. I could stop the cart with my boots, like Daring Do, the barbarian said. Who? Gamork asked. The famous barbarian, Fafir shrugged. Not as famous as Conan the Barbarian, a pirate and a mercenary who later became governor of California, got his own late-night talk show. He also... Everybody, to the right! Gamork exclaimed. The cart swerved violently, almost derailing at a sharp turn and ran through a sharp of incline loops, spiraling deeper into the dungeon. Crashed through a wooden wall, sending splinters around, slowed down a bit, going up a hill. This is the worst day of my life, Grey Mouser muttered, coughing. Punctured lung, lousy healing potions, broken ribs, and now this. He leaned forward to rim the cart to throw up. Charming immediately pulled him back, as a giant boulder missed his head by a few inches. As he says, mind your head. I'd rather mind my clothes. The necromancer looked at his robe, now adorned with vomit and blood. How do we even stop this piece of junk? By crashing it, I guess? Sarah lowered her head. The corridor was getting more and more narrow as it was clear it wasn't dug with hells or humans in mind. The cart took another sharp turn when the ground suddenly evened out. Running across a large hall, the cart wobbled on uneven, rusty tracks. It slowed down a bit, but still hit a buffer stop quite harder than it was supposed to. Gamork gasped, squeezed between the cart wall and Fafir, was trying to get back on his feet. Sarah sunk to the stone tiles and looked around, her eyes adapting to the darkness. I don't know who lived here, but judging from the frescoes on the wall, they had an unhealthy obsession with fire, elephants, and cheese. As he tried, seems we met some good dwarves. Charlene looked at Fafir and made a complicated pattern with her fingers. So he said those are just dwarf skeletons. Fafir picked up a skull laying next to a buffer stop and shrugged. Yes, that's what I meant by good dwarves, Sarah replied. They're dead. How's our friendly neighborhood necromancer? Maybe they could tell us what's going on here. Our necromancer is currently half dead, lacking 3-dimensional vision, and still having a hole in their lung. Grey Mouser coughed. I may try something, though. He looked at the dwarven skeletons, trying to find one that was more or less complete, at least not covered in cobwebs or dust. Do we go to fucking Moria? If you find a dead guy with a book, then yes, probably, Gamork replied. Grey Mouser turned to Fafir and pointed at the skull Barbarian was holding. Give me that. This one looks talkative. How can you tell? Fafir asked. He's smiling, Fafir heavily replied. They're all smiling. I think that's part of being a skeleton. Charlie smirked. Also, if the little one tries to make dwarven skeletons his personal larvae, I'll have to cut to bits. What did he say? Grey Mouser asked. Don't bring back too many dwarves, the barbarian replied. I'll try. Grey Mouser turned back to the skull. Okay, York, tell me what happened here. The skull moved slowly away with an odd, low-pitched buzz, spoken in oddly stilted power. You have one incoming call from the Chain God. Would you like to pick up the call? Greymaster froze. Oh shit, he muttered before passing out. I'm considering turning you into a Hecafa. The disembodied voice filled the halfling's whole mind. Greymaster tried to open his eye, but didn't change much. The true form of Thurzdun was so incomprehensible, the necromancer might as well stare into complete darkness. I prefer being a clerical lich, but I had to sacrifice an innocent. I'm afraid none of my companions qualified. Screammaster replied, unless, of course, Charlie is a virgin. Though given who plays her, I don't have high hopes, so shut up! Thurston exclaimed, can you imagine a lich of your height? I barely can, and I'm a fucking god here. Also, I'll let you braid the hair on your feet. That'd be new. I stopped braiding hair on my feet, Greymouser blushed. Around the time I tried to sacrifice a hamster, it didn't work out. Of course, you know this because you're apparently a fucking god here. Doesn't stop you from looking like a bundle of sticks, the chain god chuckled. Of course, I could be hallucinating because of the blood loss and breathing troubles, Greymouser said. That explains a few things. Oh, tell me, Great Thurzdun, who was behind all this? I'd rather not become a Hecafa before learning that. Well, it's a demon prince who has the gall to pretend to be Asmodeus, who gather enough followers to give the old man a one-way ticket to the moon. Or put him in chains. Wouldn't be the first one. The chain god chuckled. I'll leave that for you to figure out. Maybe if you do, maybe you'll become a proper lich one day. That's not something you hear every day. Greymouser smirked. Just like you don't see one-eyed liches often. But hey, I'm a fucking god here, right? You already said that. Greymouser replied. Also, I think I figured it out. Great. To go into their true forms were capable of smiling, Thurzdun would have completely done that. Now come back and tell your future victims. Don't look at me like that, Sonny exclaimed. I didn't get Twilight vodka this time. Lemon chuckled. I swear, if she says that again, that she's a fucking god, I'm going... Would you rather see me as a mad scientist? Twilight asked. The thing is, I don't get to play a god often, so I may be getting a bit drunk with power. Happens to all of us. Chipper shrugged. How did you figure it out, Sugarcoat? Well, which guy we know is a demon prince, likes octopuses, tentacles, and other seafood? Sugarcoat asked. I take Cthulhu and friends for $1,000, Indigo said. I mean, we got killed by the Great Old Ones so many times, I learned to pronounce their names. Well, I suspect Dagon, Sugarcoat replied. But unless this cave connects to some big underground ocean, I don't think we'll see the guy. I wonder why he's recruiting all these old flowers. Maybe he's preparing some sort of sacrifice? Sarah smirked. One day he'll drop that mine on everybody's heads and call it a day, or whatever gods do in such cases. Maybe we should grab as much gold as we can and run from this party before that happens. Maybe he plans to turn everyone to merfolk. Yeah, that's not something we want. Sarah getting wet, Indigo chuckled. Then someone will feed you after midnight, and Dagon will be the least of our problems. Oh, Sarah gets wet just fine, Lemon chuckled, while Sarah nuts her elbow. I don't think so, Indigo replied. I remember what he said the last time we got caught outside by the rain. Sarah Lemon looked at Sarah and laughed, causing Indigo to blush furiously. It's not about the rain, right? Indigo facepalmed. You two only think about one thing. Two things, actually, Sarah smirked. Twilight shook her head. Well, since Sarah and Lemon obviously need to get a room, maybe we'll continue the game next week, or anytime they calm down. Now you put that mental image in my head, I have to agree, Sugarcoat replied. Shame on you, Lemon. We're about to unravel the mystery. I thought our objective was to get the money and run before an angry god rips our asses off during some of the Christmas decorations, Sunny replied. Unless you want to kill the god, which will be interesting to watch, still perfectly from a safe distance. We'll see, Sugarcoat said. But now, I'm preparing for a showdown.